Yeah, hi peeps, Test back now, Scott Watson. Still on the topic of religion. I mean, a lot of the religious people say, well, yeah, okay, science can tell us how we got here. They can tell us about evolution, they can tell us about the Big Bang, they can tell us how that made the universe. And although they say, well, God still did that, they say that, you can't prove God exists or doesn't exist because that's not a scientific question. We can't refute science, but science can't refute religion. And for all the questions that science can answer or may someday answer, there are some questions which are definitely still within the realms of religion. One of the biggest ones of them are not how we got here, but why we're here. What is our purpose, And you can refute that. You can solidly refute that, All you've got to do is look at some of the things that happen to people in their lives and then wonder if that is the reason, what happens to them in life is the reason they were here, why would a God create them in the first place? What would be their purpose in God's eyes for that being their purpose for being, For instance, you take a child dying in childbirth. Well, obviously, its purpose was to die in childbirth. Does that make any sense? Why would God create a being, let it gestate for 9 months, only to kill it, as it's being born? Here's another one as well. 10-year-old child. He survived 10 years in life. Hasn't done anything yet. He's still a child. He's still learning about life. Hasn't found his place or his purpose. Falls off a cliff and dies. That was God's purpose for him? To live 10 years and then fall off a cliff and die? Doesn't seem like it was much of a purpose. Now, does it? Hitler. What was Hitler's purpose? Was Hitler's purpose to start the Second World War? Murder 8 million Jews and gypsies and criminals and communists? Was that God's purpose for Hitler? What was Hitler's purpose? See, this is what I'm saying. When you actually say that there's still a question, religion still is a question of why we're here, just look at some of the things that people have done and ask yourself, was that their purpose? Was that their God-given purpose? To die at childbirth, to die at 10-year-old falling off a cliff, to start a world war and kill 8 million people? It doesn't make any sense, but when you look at it, that's the main things they did in their life before their life was ended. So that must really have been their purpose, surely. Maybe their purpose fulfilled some part of God's unforeseen and unimaginably complicated plan that we just can't fathom. But it doesn't make any rational sense. And of course religion will come back and say, well, that's the thing of God. He's too confounding. He moves in mysterious ways. But it doesn't satisfy you. So, all this idea of religion still has questions to be answered. The why and wherefore. It's bullshit. There is no why or wherefore. Things happen. That's what we know about life. Things happen and there's no fathomable purpose to them. And so if you can pick and choose, hundreds of millions of unfathomable, purposeless lives, what is the purpose of any life? Even with the lives that have been good. Martin Luther King did great things. Did God put him on the earth for that purpose? To end up being shot in the head before he completed what he was doing in a lot of people's eyes? But that was his purpose, was it? Nixon, his purpose was to become president and then have to leave office because he was a criminal. That was his purpose. Newton, his purpose, I suppose, was to discover the theory of gravity and disprove the religious idea that the universe was magically brought into being rather than being held in place and governed by gravity. You know, and there's many other things that have been done by great people. Some people would say that, you know, Gandhi, his purpose was to, well, free India. It could have been just as well been anybody else that did it, you know. They might even have beat the English, you know, if Gandhi hadn't come along sometime down the road by kicking us out physically and violently. Like so many other nations we see today doing it to their unjust governments. So there's no necessity that Gandhi had to be there unless it needed to be done at that time for God's purpose. But when you look at life, there's no real purpose. And asking the question, why are we here? And then saying, well, these purposes, these things aren't the purpose. I mean, what possibly could be the purpose of the why and wherefore of a child dying in childbirth? What was God's magical, magnificent plan for that child dying before it even had time to draw a breath from the world? There's no purpose to these things. There's no whys. But I'm sure there's probably some theists out there who may be able to come back and give me a rational, reasonable, you know, explanation of the why of these, you know, things I've chosen to you know, choose to look at and describe as nonsensical, irrational, non-purposeful lives, you know. So on, Shiva.